and good morning to everyone with this new webinar and giving you an update on the future release 11.26. So it's going to be a technical update. Future release 11.26 is now GA since February 15th of this year. So it's available for the installation. So what is on the agenda for today? Like in every webinar session regarding the future releases, we have a schedule and lifecycle update. We have security updates topics, event management integrations, ComServe automatic failover, object storage replication, Commvault tags, and some virtualization updates. And the last slide is just a reference slide where you can find the additional information. The presentation will be shared with everybody who joined the session later via PDF. So all these slides, etc., will be made available for you as well. So first topic, future release schedules and life cycles. So where are we today? 11.26, like I said, is GA since February 15th of this year. And we have quite a lot of, the end of life dates. And that is up till 11.21. So all the red marked, except for the long-term support releases. Suspect 16 is still on an LTS version. 11.20 is still the long-term support release. And we have 11.24. And as you can see, Suspect 16 has still a date of 5 years before its end of life. So that's June 15, 2024. And that is exactly the same date as future release 11.24, which also expires on the June 15th of 2024. That is because Commvault has made a change that they're going to reduce the support for LTS versions from 5 years to 3 years. So, but this is where we currently are. So if you are on an older version, except for the LTS, and then 11.21, please make sure that you get your environment up to date to at least an LTS version or 11.22. Also, keep note that not everything will be backported in previous LTS versions. So new features which will become available in newer feature releases will not all be backported in, for example, 11.20 or Suspect 16. So keep that in mind. If you need to have new features available, you probably need to update to a newer feature release. So first, the technical update is the security updates. So what are the new features in future release 11.26? Is network zoning tenant-aware certificates because of the zero trust and infrastructure-aware certificates. And some small incremental changes that the DR backup storage policy is enabled with WORM. Some expanded support for ransomware protection on Linux and ransomware protections for disaster recovery backup on Linux ComServe. So let's dive into a few of those topics a little bit more in detail. So the zero trust, I think most of you know, but it's centered on the belief that organizations should not automatically trust anything, either coming from the outside or inside its perimeter network. And the trust model demands that anyone or everything which tries to connect to an organization must first be verified before the access is granted. And that is also important for your backup data. So you don't want also that insider threats are going to be exposed to your environment. So therefore, Commvault also is very keen on that zero trust feature. It's not a feature, it's a kind of a guideline for architecting the IT systems. That's also mentioned in here. So why is it important? It helps reduce risk from insider threats. It reduces destructive accidents. So to make sure that internal people also are not allowed or by accident delete any data, which is important on your backup system. And it reduces lateral moving of threats. So
with zero trust, how is DNS working in that case? Because normally
sorry, can
is
you repeat the
leaning
question?
on DNS.
Okay, sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
In when you implement zero trust, how is DNS working in that phase? Because normally Commvault leans a lot on DNS.
Yeah, it depends. Zero trust. Let me continue with this topic then, because DNS is not really something what blocks you to set up a zero trust environment, because zero trust is a combination of multiple things. And in the next slide, we have a diagram of Commvault. It's zero trust model, and there you can actually see what is zero trust meaning within the Commvault architecture.
Okay.
So if you have any questions later, then just please write them down, and we will come back to that later. But maybe in the next slides, a few things become more clear to you.
Okay.
So zero trust network controls. So securing the perimeter is not enough. So in this example, we have a house here, and you can actually secure the perimeter by a fence. But there's additional tasks which you can perform to make sure that it's really safe. You can introduce monitoring in your house. You can lock rooms, but even within a locked room, you can place a safe which is also locked. So because of the insider threats, it's not only enough to secure your perimeter. You also need to take a look inside your environment as well to make sure that is also secure. And there the Commvault Zero Trust model comes in place. So if you look at the application level of Commvault, that is secured with the Center for Internet Security standards, and also the binary protection. So Commvault has digital signatures on their binaries. So only Commvault processes are allowed to do anything with those binaries. On the networking side, we have the certificate authentication that is new now in Future Release 11.26. That is with the tenant aware and the infrastructure aware certificates. We can set up multi-tenancy. So, for example, in our own DMAS environments, where we, for example, host the M365 solution backups for our customers, that is completely multi-tenant aware. So the different tenants don't have any access to any other of the tenants and its data. We can configure data isolation and air gapping. So what you can do, an example, is that you can set up a virtual machine as a media agent with a library attached, and that media agent is down normally, and it's only used when new auxiliary copies need to be made for that third copy which you want to make. And then you can actually schedule the media agent to go down. So then you have the air gap. Your data is isolated. It's not reachable because that media agent is down. So that's just one example, but there are multiple ways to set up the data isolation and air gap within Commvault to really make sure your data is safe. Also Metallic, which we host as a platform as well for different scenarios, also Office 365 backups, but also on-premise stuff can be backed up. That is also completely on the zero trust model. Your data itself, we can define data as immutable and warm copies. So with warm copies, you block the lowering of your retention on certain copies and deletion of data. That is really on the Commvault side. And you can go even one step further with data immutability, is that you, for example, if you have cloud storage, that you use the S3 lock feature. So then it's even not possible to do anything, even if you have access keys and secret keys to the cloud libraries, to do anything with your data. Data encryption, either with or without external key management systems, can be configured, which is also recommended, and normally we set it up as default. And also within Metallic, the data is encrypted. So on the data side, there's also lots of opportunities to make sure that your data is not accessible without the correct permissions and without the only with the correct application. So Commvault in this scenario. To access your environment, the user access, there's the AAA framework. In previous presentations, I've already told a couple of times the AAA framework, what is how the diagram looks like. That is still in place. Multi-factor authentication is in place. The 4ISE authorization is possible. So also for internal flats, let's say that you have masters within your Commvault environment. Those people are able to delete clients or to delete any data on storage policy level. That can be blocked with 4ISE authorization. So a second person needs to approve, for example, deletion or lowering your retention on your copies. So that's for the insider threats. And CyberArk integration has been there a couple of feature releases now already. So this is how the zero trust model of Commvault looks like. So you see that on different levels, you make sure that you have a secure environment and that your data is safe. So a new feature has been introduced, tenant-aware certificates. That is for multi-tenant aware environments. The reason that I put it in this slide is that I know that we have customers using our DMaaS platform, and we use gateway machines for on-premise clients connecting to our DMaaS environments. Now, there's a new feature now by default also enabled that the traffic coming from multiple tenants is now using different certificates. So it's really secure now. Previously, that was a common certificate used by the gateway machines. Now it is per tenant that we use different certificates. So that is now introduced. Certificates are tenant aware. And that is, like I said here, it's a default control now. So by default, it is enabled. There's nothing else what you need to do. Or another update regarding the certificates is the Commvault Infrastructure Aware certificates. The problem was that servers and applications make callback messages to the CommServe to run certain operations. That was also always going to the CommServe itself. Now they have actually solved that to allow resources to authenticate directly to other authority machines within your CommCell environment, such as web server, workflow engine. So that reduces the CommServe callbacks, so the messages sent to the CommServe, and that eliminates the callbacks to the CommServe, and that is also then limiting the potential exposure to the CommServe. So the less the CommServe is contacted, the less potential there is to expose anything as a risk. Some incremental updates on the security and networking topic. The CommServe disaster recovery storage policy retention lock is now enabled. There's some expanded ransomware protection for Linux support. And there is now ransomware protection available for disaster recovery backups on Linux CommServe. So regarding the CommServe DR storage policy retention lock, that is now enabled for new and existing backups, and that restricts reducing the retention and storage policy, storage amount paths associated. So if you have set a certain retention on your storage policy copy level for disaster recovery backup, WARM is enabled, and let's say that you have that set on 60 days, 60 cycles, it is not possible to lower that retention anymore. By default, the retention now has been changed to 15 days, 15 cycles for new setups. The existing setups will keep their current retention settings. And I already told you in the beginning, some things are being backported into previous feature releases. This feature is supported now from 11.20 and up. So that is one of the features which is actually being backported. There's expanded Linux ransomware protection from 11.24 and later. The list of Red Hat and CentOS versions are now from 7.6 and forward. So in all those versions, you can now enable Linux ransomware protection. If you have any questions how to enable it, it's basically 2 scripts which you need to run on your Linux media agent, which then configures the ransomware protection. If you need any help with that, please just contact us. And then ransomware protection for disaster backups on Linux ComServe. It is in here. The Linux ComServe is still an early adapter program since the tech preview release of Future Release 11.25. But Commvault is working really hard to make the ComServe on Linux available as well. So also the ransomware protection for disaster recovery backups on Linux ComServe is now supported from 11.25 and later. This was the first topic. Are there any questions? I'm not sure if the DNS question is now clear or if there's any additional questions. Reda, if you have any notes, I don't have access to the chat, so please let me know if there is any open outstanding questions.
No, I don't see a question in the chat. Does someone has a question? He can also put his hand up. Oh, I see one question from Chris. ROM copy is not enabled for DR copy in the cloud.
For the disaster recovery backup, you mean, Chris, or? And otherwise, we will take it offline, or I can include it in the PDF which we send out. That the answers which are.
I see that the ROM copy is enabled for the primary copy, but not for the secondary copy.
Yeah, that could be the case. Yeah, I think it's only for the primary copy by default. Yeah,
yes,
but you can enable a worm on any copy already for a long time. So if there's a requirement to enable it also for a secondary copy, it's in the storage policy copy properties advanced tab, where you can actually enable worm. It's just really one checkbox.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but thanks for noticing, Chris.
Yes.
Okay, and someone is asking, or we can send the slides afterwards. Yes, that's possible. And also this video of the webinar, we will be send it to you guys.
Yeah, the presentation will be made available in PDF and sent out to all participants. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any further questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we will continue with the next topic. Event management integrations. New features in this release. The Splunk plugin is available and webhooks can now be configured for alerts. Commvault finds it very important that the interoperability with the event management systems is there for Commvault because it's really an addition to keep track of your alerts and monitoring the whole environment. So the focus of Commvault is integrating that with strategic leading platforms. So Splunk, for example, is of course one of the leading platforms in here. Commvault also wants to build open frameworks, open protocols to access, for example, syslog or using APIs, and in this case also webhooks. And key drivers there are, make sure that you can keep log data or go through log data, trigger events, alerts, and other trails. So the Splunk plugin is available in the Splunk base. And yeah, the reason for that is because it's one of the leading event management platforms. And that allows the organizations to monitor Commvault log data in Splunk. So you can actually use Splunk to filter all your logs of all your systems in your Commcell environment to do some troubleshooting or do performance monitoring, etc. So that is now available in Splunk. And we have the webhook.
Splunk is new for me. I don't know if I'm the only one, but Splunk is what? Plugin?
Yeah, the Splunk plugin is new in Commvault, but Splunk is already a long time existing platform for capturing log and events. And then it's a separate program. It's outside of Commvault, but Commvault now has that plugin available. And Splunk itself can be used to monitor and gather logs, etc., through your whole infrastructure. So Splunk is an application on its own, but now Commvault has the integration with Splunk.
Okay.
Webhook for alerts. So webhooks are now available. Webhooks are a lightweight API framework, and they can actually receive API requests. And now Commvault has the integration to send it to an endpoint, and that can be, for example, Slack or Teams or Splunk, etc. I have an example in one of the next slides. And that is then in real-time JSON format. So you can actually do anything with JSON. You can use filtering, or you can kick off new automation jobs when certain events appear, etc. So that's really flexible. And that provides the flexibility for alerting and then sending notifications to other systems. So how does that look? I don't have Splunk, by the way, so that's why I don't have any screenshots or anything for Splunk itself. But for Webhook, I've made a few screenshots. So in the command center, everything is a command center based. You can go into System and Webhooks. There you can actually define webhooks. And you can do that, for example, for Slack or Teams, or you can create any test. So any webhook endpoint which you have available in your infrastructure can be configured here as a webhook within Commvault. Then when you create an alert in Commvault, because, I don't know, you want to capture when a media agent is down, in example, then you can send an alert to a webhook, and the recipients, you can choose which webhook you want to send it to. So if you have something configured for Slack or for Teams or for Splunk, you can choose that webhook here where you actually want to send that alert to. And then the alert is sent with a JSON structure. Keep in mind that, for example, Slack and Teams have a different JSON structure. So when you configure the alert, you need to make sure that you have the correct JSON format in your alert. In Books Online, it is mentioned, and some examples how to configure this. So this is the alert which you create. And then when the alert actually happens, and this is an example for Teams, you see that within Teams, you will receive that alert. And that is based on the JSON structure and with variables, etc. So this is an option now to send alerts. Normally, you either use email or you can use SNMP traps, for example, but also now webhooks can be used to configure alerts. So when we dive into third-party integration methods, Syslog is there, Splunk plugin is now available. You can use APIs, webhooks are now available, and workflows have been there for a while already as well. And you can see that different features have different options available. So for Splunk plugin, you can see you can use that for log data. The webhook can be used to send alerts for now. That will be expanded. Workflows can be used for custom data sets. So when a certain alert is happening, you can use a workflow to perform some certain actions. So there's different methods and different features available to create what you actually need. And then the best tool for the job. Every feature has its pro and its cons. So what you actually need to use for your event management is really depending on what your requirements are and what feature does the best job for you. I will not go into all the pros and cons. You will receive the presentation, but the goal is that you combine the tools to meet your needs. It's not that one of those feature sets will satisfy you for 100%. It could be that you need to make a combination of different feature sets to make sure you capture all the logs or all the alerts in your environment. So try to combine the tools to meet your needs. That's actually the goal for today. Any questions?
There was one question, but I'm about Microsoft Sentinel, but I'm looking for the right answer. So we'll be back on that.
Okay.
There are no further questions in the chat.
All right. We're halfway, and the slides also about halfway, so we're good on schedule. Next topic, automatic ComServe failover. It's not really a new feature in this feature release, but they have made some adjustments, and that's why it's actually now mentioned in this feature release set. And I think it's quite important for the technical guys to know what you can do with it and what it's meant for. So the automatic ComServe failover is based on the ComServe LiveSync. Not sure if everybody knows, but you can configure ComServe LiveSync with one or more standby servers. So you have one production server and you can have one or multiple standby ComServe. And that is basically based on SQL backups and restores. So what you configure is a production ComServe, which has a second instance installed with a SQL agent. And the same on your standby ComServe, they have an instance which is by default, the servers are stopped for your ComServe part, and they have a second instance also with SQL. And basically what happens from your production ComServe, there is SQL backups scheduled on a certain interval, which you can configure. And as soon as those backups are ready, it will restore those log backups out of place to either one of the standby ComServes. That is basically, very basically, what the ComServe LiveSync does. And now there's also the availability to do an automatic ComServe failover when the production ComServe is down. So that brings high availability to the ComServe without manual intervention. And for customers which have Hyperscale X running, you don't need to have the Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization layer anymore, so that reduces that dependency. And because there's no manually involvement required anymore, it reduces the ComServe downtime. So how does it work? You need to enable automatic failover in Command Center. In the next slide, I have a screenshot. You need to select at least 3 nodes for monitoring. And when you select those machines, it's also in the next slide, the high availability package is automatically pushed to those monitoring nodes. So you must have at least 3 available, and those 3 will have the high availability package installed automatically. So what happens? The automatic failover will occur when the Commvault processes go down on the production ComServe and the failover instance. So like I said, you have 2 instances running on your production ComServe. One is really your ComServe instance, and the second instance is the SQL, which is taking care of your SQL backup. So both need to be down. The CVD process for both instances need to be down for the automatic failover to occur. that will be monitored by 3 nodes at least. And if less than 3 nodes report the system up, then a failover is initiated. So 3 nodes must say, okay, this environment is still up, nothing will happen. But as soon as one of those will actually say, okay, this one of them notice that the CVD process is down for both instances, then automatically the failover will take place. What then will happen is that the standby ComServe with the latest version of the database, so the one which has actually the most recent restore performed, will be selected first. And if they're all equally, then the failover node will be performed to the client with the lowest client ID. So that is the, let's say, the oldest standby ComServe installed, because that has the lowest client ID. And this is actually how it looks. You need to enable automatic failover. And on the monitoring nodes, you need to have at least 3 available. And there's the add button here. When you select the add button, you can add multiple monitoring nodes, which will then have the high availability package installed. And in this example here, you can see I have actually 3 failover nodes available. One is active and the other 2 are passive. So in Command Center, it's really easy to configure this. Any questions on automatic failover of the ComServe?
Chris says you must be sure that you have a good performance for your LiveSync server. And Patrick already answered the question about Microsoft Sentinel.
Okay.
So that's
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris is right. I'm not sure, Chris, if you're talking about the standby ComServe with LiveSync server. I assume that you mean the standby nodes, because when you do a failover, of course, the resources must be available on a standby machine. Normally, if it's a standby machine just really standing by, it probably doesn't need to have that much resources available. But when you do have the automatic failover configured, that can also, for example, happen during the night when your backups are running. Yeah, you need to make sure that when the failover happens, your standby serve has enough resources available.
Yeah, we have a misconfigured LiveSync setup, and is resolved by Conval after 3 months.
Okay. And now it's working, Chris, or?
Now it's working.
Okay.
You must be sure that you choose the default setup failover clients, and not
Yeah, there's
use,
yeah,
and
there
you must
you
not
need
use
to.
the existing configuration.
Yeah, it depends if you already have an existing configuration or a new setup. There's a specific way that you need to install the instances. And yeah, in the past, it was not very clear how to install them. There was also an internal discussion a bit with it about within Comfort itself. But now I know that the books online now have been updated already for quite some time with the exact instructions how you need to set up LiveSync. But yeah, of course, also when you need any help with this, please let us know. Okay, object storage replication. Next topic. New features. Object storage replication is now supported for Amazon S3 and Azure Blob. So what are the use cases? You can now replicate object storage within a cloud vendor, so within AWS or within Azure, but also across cloud vendors. And also from cloud storage to files, for example, Azure files or any file system supported by disaster recovery, and the other way around. So what are the benefits here? Well, object storage is now widely integrated. Applications also in the cloud require continuity in their availability. And yeah, protect object storage also is required for the security, and make sure that it is also available on alternate cloud storage. So if something happens on one of the cloud vendors, you have your applications running using the object storage. There's an easy way to actually set it up also on another cloud storage to make sure it's still available. So the architecture is very simple. You have one source workload, which has their data on the object storage. With Commvault, we have access nodes, which actually really do the backup. They gather the data from the object storage and write it to any media agent with their storage. You can set up the replication and or migration to the other cloud vendor or another file system which is supported on the DR side, also with access nodes. You can have a disaster recovery backup, and from that disaster recovery backup, you can actually restore that to the other object storage or other file system where it's supported. So it's a really basic setup, not complex. It's really based on backup and restores on a certain time interval. Replication can be triggered from the command center under the disaster recovery feature set, or backups and restores are automatically scheduled based on the plan assigned to the source client. So let's say on the source you have a backup running, let's say every hour. Then as soon as the backup is ready, it will automatically restore that to your disaster recovery destination. And monitoring can be done through the replication manager, also in the command center, or through the disaster recovery dashboard available in your CommCell environment. So it's really easy to set up. And because a lot of customers are actually requesting this feature, because you see that more and more customers are having object storage in the cloud also for the applications, Commvault has now introduced this feature in this new release. Any questions?
There are no questions in the chat, Matti.
Okay. Tags, Commvault tags. So yeah, a tag, what is a tag? Yeah, a tag is a kind of label that you can apply to objects in your CommCell environment, but also we know that, for example, VMware is using tags, and a lot of other vendors are using tagging to filter and to identify certain entities within their product. Commvault actually also uses that already to define virtual machine groups based on VMware tags, an example. But also Commvault is using tags to add information to your VM when the last backup has occurred. And now Commvault is actually introducing its own tag, which you can assign to any Commvault entity. They say any here, there's a list, I will show that to you in a moment, to which entity you can actually define tags. And that's then quite easy and helpful to filter entities on certain tagging. So an example, if you have a tag headquarter and you assign that to all clients or all servers within the company headquarters, you can filter on that tag and you get a list of all your servers in that location. That feature is already available for a longer period since future release 11.23, but then only through REST APIs. And now you can actually configure it through the command center itself as well. So you can use the GUI to define the tags. And the list with tags for which entities those are available, it's down here. So for example, virtual machines, hypervisors, VM groups, but also plans, databases, etc. You can all define tags there. And like I said, it's really easy to filter or group certain resources or entities. lots of customer already requested this as well for some period. Now it's introduced, and it makes life easy to manage your environment. But it also can be used for if you have certain workloads or applications which do not support tagging by themselves. You can now use Commvault to actually filter it within your CommCell environment, even if it's not on the application level itself. There are a few restrictions, but I don't think that's going to be any issue there. Per entity, you can use maximum 20 tags to be assigned, and a tag name cannot be more than 512 characters long. And the value can be 1024 characters long. So how can you configure any tag? Just by going to the action button, there's a manage tag down there where you can actually define any tag which you would like, and you can assign a tag to an entity. That's Commvault Tags, which is now available in this new feature release.
There's one question. Oh.
Yep.
Can tags be set automatic?
No, cannot be set automatic. As far as I know, that is not possible. No. Not sure if that will come. If you can write that question down, I can ask development if there's any on the roadmap to do that automatically. And I'm not sure what the exact question is. If that, for example, is when it's automatically be assigned to a group or something, or certain naming.
I don't know. I don't know yet.
Okay. Yeah. If you want any detailed questions, just let us know. I can ask Commvault development if there's anything on the roadmap, or if there's anything new what you want to achieve. Then also you can let us know, and we can discuss it with Commvault.
Great, thank you.
There are no further questions.
All right. Then we go into the virtualization updates. Some new features there. There's a preview option for VM group content. We will dive into that in a moment. You can now deploy the file recovery enabler from the command center, which has some advantages. Oracle Linux supported for the virtual server access node, and the custom attributes backup restore for vCenter. So first one, preview option for the VM group content. So when you define a VM group which you want to include in your backup based on VMs within a data store, or what we just discussed, using tags, regular expressions, etc. You configure that virtual machine group. But then the question is, okay, I have now configured this. Which machines are now included in my backup? Am I sure that everything is being backed up? And this new feature helps you to answer that question. Before running a data protection operation, you can validate of what will be included, but also it will do a test to see if it actually can back up the data what you have defined. So is the access to the vCenter environment, is that working? Is the auto discovery working? That is now possible within this new feature. So it is available already since 11.25. It is enabled for all hypervisors when virtual machine groups are created within the command center. And then, yeah, they call it the preview option, but the button itself is called test backup. So if you have if you go to the preview, you can actually run the test backup. And what it basically will do, it will open a connection to your hypervisor. It will validate if that virtual machine is existing. It will create a snapshot of that virtual machine, and that is of course hypervisor dependent. It will validate if the access node can mount that VM, and then it will remove the snapshot. And all that information during the test will be shown in the command center. So you will exactly see what is being tested, which machine are included in the backup. If everything goes well, or for example, if the mounting goes wrong, you will get a very detailed test report in command center for that virtual machine group. So previously, you always needed to run a data protection job, a backup, and then you say, okay, well, it's not working. So what do I need to fix? Then you need to start a new backup job. Starting that backup job is not now required anymore. There's now the test backup, which actually gives you the report and shows you if it goes well or what goes wrong. So there's no requirement anymore to run a real backup. And this is a really big advantage, I think. So key points to remember, you can validate the VM content and also testing without running a data protection job. It reduces the error during backup window because you've already tested it before. And you can actually simplify the backup system configuration because of the reducing the trial and error with the protection jobs. Then the file recovery enabler for Linux. There is a requirement for the file recovery enabler in certain scenarios where you need to do some indexing operations on, for example, virtual machine, Linux virtual machine backups, where you want to do file level restores. You need to have a Linux access node, and there's also certain scenarios where you actually need that file recovery enabler. In the past, it has been a real struggle to deploy them. There's an OVA template available, which you manually need to download. You need to contact your vCenter administrator. They need to make sure that OVA template is available. You need to have access to that virtual machine to deploy it to set a certain configuration. It has been simplified a bit over time, but it was still a manual operation. Now, with the deployment possibility from the command center, that has been reduced and simplified it a lot. You can now deploy that virtual recovery enabler from the command center itself. And so that is for simplifying it, and also it reduces the deployment errors. Previously, you also needed to check, okay, do I have the latest available, the latest downloaded? Did I configure it correctly within the destination hypervisor? Can you repeat that process if you need to deploy some additional ones? Now that it's all done automatically. The latest version which is available in your CompStel environment, is automatically deployed. It will automatically deploy your virtual machine. So it will connect to your hypervisor. It will basically perform a kind of restore from a template. And you can now do this without contacting your vCenter before. So you don't have any access requirement anymore manually to your vCenter environment to deploy that OVA template. If your hypervisor is already configured within your Commvault environment, that is probably set up with a service account, and that is used to actually restore this file recovery enabler. So you don't need to log in to vCenter with any credentials anymore. And here on the right-hand side, you can actually deploy a new Linux access node. And then you can specify the host name, etc., and then it will perform a restore for that template. And then there's an update on the Oracle Linux support for virtual server access nodes. The reason for that is that Red Hat has discontinued the development and support for CentOS Linux, with CentOS 8 reaching end of support on December the 31st of last year. And CentOS 9 is being cancelled. And the current file recovery enabler for Linux was based on CentOS Linux. So Commvault has now replaced the CentOS with Oracle Linux, which is also a fork of the Red Hat Enterprise Linux like CentOS. So that ensures that development, support, operations, etc. will continue to work with Oracle on Linux. So does that mean anything for existing Commvault customers which have that CentOS VSA proxy node, the access node? Access node templates and other systems will all be migrated to Oracle on Linux. So if you have new deployments to do and you need to download a new media kit, that will automatically be based on Oracle Linux. Administrative and support considerations remain unchanged. End users will see very little difference day to day. If you have an existing CentOS access node, you can just deploy a new one and configure that one as to be used for backups. And you can deconfigure the CentOS access node, which you already have in your environment. There's no real requirements there. It's just a selection of a new access node within your hypervisor configuration. And Commvault will continue provide security updates, OS updates, etc. on Oracle Linux. And then the last topic for the VMware updates is backup restore vCenter custom attributes. vSphere and vCenter using the tagging to assign virtual machines automatically to groups or any other specific task. Previously, when you did a backup of a certain VM and restore it, those VM tags were gone. Those custom attributes were gone. So you need to define them again on that certain virtual machine. Now, with this new feature, during the protection and recovery operations, the attributes will be part of the backup and also will be restored together with the virtual machine. So Commvault detects them and restores them together with the virtual machine. That minimizes the disruption to automation following a VM restore. So because the custom attributes are part of the restore, the virtual machine will, in example, be automatically placed in the current group or in the current folder. And that allows also to be show the VM custom attributes to be included within the metadata about the VM within the Commvault indexes. So how does this help? Well, I think I already explained that. It will restore the custom attributes, so it will automatically pick up the things which are configured within the vCenter. And then here you can actually see a backup of a virtual machine, and you can actually see that the custom attributes are now visible within Command Center as well for that particular virtual machine. Some frequently asked questions from coming from customers, all with the same answer. Commvault is working on them. Currently, VMware custom attributes cannot be restored without restoring the whole VM. So if you have an existing VM and you just want to update them with the custom attributes, that is currently not possible, but Commvault is investigating that. You can also not do a comparison yet between the protected custom attributes of virtual machine and the live attributes on a virtual machine. Also, that is being explored by Commvault currently. And is there a way to see custom attributes within Command Center? Not yet, except for the picture I just show you here on the VM backup, but not the live ones. That was the virtualization topic update. I'm not sure if any last questions there.
Yes, there are 2 questions.
Yep.
Oh, 3, I see right now.
Yep.
What happens with the old FREL? Dus FREL?
Yeah, the file level recovery enabler. That is still existing. That is, this is a different way of deploying a file level recovery enabler. So just the deployment process is different. You can now do it from the Command Center, but I don't think, I can double check, but I don't think the let's say the old-fashioned way to deploy it is, I think that one is still available, because as far as I know, the OVA template can still be downloaded separately also from Commvault Cloud.
Yeah, when you configure a new one, you must delete the old one by yourself.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Okay.
The other question is, how about licensing for Oracle Linux?
Yeah, that the access nodes. You mean the access nodes or the file level recovery enabler? Is that?
Jeffrey, you can unmute your laptop of Frel. He says Frel.
Okay, yeah. So, and then the question, can you repeat that, Rera?
Yeah. How about licensing for Oracle Linux?
For the Frel, it should be included the same as for CentOS, because the Commvault gives you that that template available. And I don't think there's any change there if it's now on Oracle Linux or before on CentOS. I can double check that for you, but I don't think there's any difference there in the previous situation and now in the new situation. But I can double check.
Okay, perfect. Then the other question is, can you also restore tags from a VM?
Like said in the presentation, you cannot restore only the attributes, the custom attributes for a VM. It's now to get restored together with the whole VM restore.
No, that was not my question. That was not my question.
Yeah.
My question, you can restore a custom attribute when you restore the whole VM. Does it also restore the tags you defined in the vCenter server?
The vCenter tag, isn't that a custom attribute?
I don't know, sure.
I think the tagging is a custom attribute within vCenter.
Yeah, I think so as well.
When it is a custom attribute, then it's good enough.
Yeah. So I think the tagging with it, as I understand from you, it is a custom attribute within vCenter. So if that is restored together with the VM, then that is restored as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Then we have a question from Erik. Will the CentOS 8 Frel still be working in release 11.26?
As far as I know, it should still be working, but because technical, there's no difference. Only the support is gone because Red Hat doesn't support it anymore. So I don't see any reason why it is not working anymore. It's just that the support is gone, and I'm not sure in the future releases which will come if there will be a check when you install the agent, the package, if that will be checked, if it actually will check the operating system itself. But as far as I know, on 11.26, I think it should still be working.
Okay. Then we have a last question, and that's Oracle Linux has no license fees, but support contracts on Oracle Linux aren't free. Is support arranged by Commvault?
If it's an access node, so let's say for backing up virtual machines, then you need to deploy that operating system yourself, and we actually just install the package of Commvault on it. Then the support is for the operating itself is at the customer. If, for example, it is used with the file level recovery enabler, then Commvault actually creates a kind of appliance, a kind of virtual machine from a template which includes that operating system. So if you have any issues on that level, so only with your file level recovery enabler, and there is something on the operating system which blocks that it is working well, then Commvault should help you with troubleshooting that part. And the Commvault also provides the security updates, etc., for the Frel together with maintenance releases.
Okay. So there are no further questions.
Okay, and I'm through my presentation. In the last slide is just some links where you can actually find this additional information about the new feature release. That will be included in the PDF, which you all will receive. And that's just my presentation. So I want to thank everybody for its attention, and I wish you all a nice day.